Fall is in full swing. Most of us have navigated the change of pace. I wonder what else you're dealing with in this season of your life. We're about to see a powerful portrait of God's amazing grace. My guest writes, "Cancer tests every bit of endurance you have within you. It places a strain on every area of your life, but the area it attacks relentlessly is your faith. Questions abounded inside as to why we had to walk this road, and fatigue set in when we felt we couldn't do it alone. That is when we realized we weren't doing it alone. Looking back, we lovingly referred to the days of cancer as the best, worst days of our life, because as difficult as they were the moments that changed us forever in the loveliest ways. It caused us to cling to each other like never before. Even more so, it caused us to cling to the Lord like never before. In these moments, He wasn't just words on a page or God in the heavens. He was Father, He was friend, He was grace, He was strength. He was all we needed." Now, this is the beginning of chapter 2 in a journey of beauty from ashes. From depths we rise is the story of Sarah Rodriguez. And you may have read it already in People magazine. They're coming again, Sarah. They love this story.
Yes.
It's a heartbreaker. You are one brave young woman.
Thank you, Maura.
A Southern belle, and you begin the book with jumping into your mother's greatest fear. Not that you would go to New York, but...
That I would meet a boy in New York.
And you did.
I did. She told me not to, but I didn't listen, and it turned out okay.
Oh, it turned out okay in many ways. Joel. Got to pronounce his name correctly, because
Yes.
reading the book, it was Joel.
Yes.
You called him Jojo.
Yes, my JoJo.
Cancer wasn't your first trial as a married couple.
No, our first battle that we ever faced was infertility. And infertility is something you never dream you would face. You just expect whenever you're ready to start your family that it'll happen. And so when we started trying and it didn't happen, it was the first time that my faith was really shaken, and I was wondering, why are my prayers seemingly hitting the ceiling? Why are things not happening the way that I had planned?
You were 29 and 33 when you decided to do something more radical.
Yes, we had made a decision. We had gone through a lot of testing and a lot of doctors, and we got to the point where they said that IVF was our only hope to get pregnant. And so we were making plans to start IVF. We had gone through all the blood work and everything we needed to begin, and then we got some news that stopped everything in our tracks.
Do I have the date there? I don't.
was-
That first diagnosis of
May 10th, yeah, May 10th, 2010. My husband had been passing blood in his urine, and we weren't sure what was happening. We just assumed it was kidney stones, because of course your mind never goes to that. And he had had a CT scan to test what was wrong, and the doctor came in the room with the results, and he just looked at my husband and said, "Sir, you have kidney cancer." And it was the shock of both of our lives.
You faced this so bravely, but before chemo, you did something that would
Changed our
Change
lives forever.
everything.
Yeah, we had, and I look back, and this is just the goodness of God, because this is one of those decisions that changed our lives forever. But we had heard somewhere that chemo could render a man sterile, and we had already been in the process of trying to start our family, and we knew that that was our biggest dream. So we took steps to freeze his sperm, in the hopes that after he finished chemo, that we would be able to jump right into starting our family again. And that was a life-changing decision.
As you read the book, it is a back and forth of diagnoses, treatment, rehab, and then in the midst, you'd actually gone to Puerto Rico, where Joel was from. Interestingly, both his parents died with cancer. 5-year anniversary was Puerto Rico. And then babies.
Yes, just a few months after he finished chemo, since we had the frozen sperm, we were able to jump right in. And on our very first time, we put in 2 embryos. We had 2 remaining, and we got pregnant with twins. And sadly, I lost one of the twins during my first trimester, and that was a very difficult experience. But I was able to carry the other baby to term and had a healthy little baby boy, and he was definitely our beauty from ashes and our triumphant moment.
Milo,
Milo.
a name well chosen.
Yes.
Means?
Yes. It means soldier. And we thought that he was a little soldier to get to us, and it's also an abbreviation of my husband's middle name, which is Emilio.
So much meaning in all of this, and so much emotion, even as you talk about the loss of that twin at 11 weeks. I think it's hard for some people to understand the real grief that happens. Your heart has already embraced that little person on the way. And then the return.
Just a couple days before my son was born, we had a routine checkup for my husband, and they found an area of concern. And so this time it was on his lung, and they did a biopsy. And 3 days after my son's birth, we got the results that the cancer had returned.
And the results were promised on the same day as your due date with little Milo. I just love your honesty in the book. In that moment, joy was continuing to battle sorrow as fear took the throne from peace. We had been here before, too many times before. Every time hope began to rise, we were pulled deeper into the depths. And on this day, well, we just wanted to pretend that life couldn't possibly be that cruel again. I don't read one place where Joel questions God. Joel questions God. He's so positive.
No, yeah.
Despite assault after assault, we don't have time to do all the back and forth. And then strokes.
Yes, he had surgery to remove the cancer from his lung after chemo failed to work the second time, and the next morning he had a stroke, and then he ended up having additional strokes, and he never recovered.
Joel died Friday, July 23rd, 2013. He was almost 36. How old are you?
He was almost 36, so I was, let me do the math, 31, about to turn 32.
Yeah.
My birthday was 10 days after his death. And at his funeral, we released 36 balloons.
You developed hives all over your body. And you say the doctors told you it's because you didn't have any more tears to cry.
Yeah, it's the body and its response to trauma is so interesting, and I've done so much studying, but it's basically when your body runs out of ways to express the emotions, that's when the stress can cause hives. And so I would just sit there and itch all up and down my legs, and it was just my body trying to outwardly process what I was feeling on the inside.
What got you through these deepest, darkest depths?
You know, what I always focus on is what I know to be true of the Lord. And I know what he has told me is that he is good. And so his goodness was my foundation, and everything else paled in comparison to, in light of that. And he told me that he is good, that he is faithful, that he is with me. His plans are not to harm me, but to prosper me. So I would not allow the situation and the circumstances to dictate his goodness. I would always go back to the point of who he told me he was, even when it didn't look that way. I would say, God, even in the death of my love and my greatest friend, you are good, and I know that I will see your goodness in the land of the living, because that is your promise to me.
It's so much a Job story, because the assaults just seem to keep coming. On your birthday, you got a call from the funeral home that your husband's ashes were ready to be picked up. Come on.
But you know what? I felt so devastated in that moment, but I just felt the Lord whisper in my heart, and he said, you give me your ashes and I will make them beautiful. And I want to weep just thinking about that moment, because it was such a devastating moment. But even then, I was going to hold on to the promise that he was going to make the most horrible moment of my life, that he would cause beauty to arise from it.
You know, I just happened to open, I feel it is of the Lord that I opened this today. Job 9. I literally opened to this page and I read, he does things too marvelous to understand. He performs countless miracles. Wait for it. If he snatches someone in death, who can stop him? Who dares to ask, what are you doing? I never heard that from your husband. I'm sure it must have been in your heart. But here comes a miracle. Because your husband surprised you on a day where you were encouraged to, the nurse encouraged you to get up on the bed with him, as awkward as it was with all the gizmos going on. And he said something to you that was surprising.
Between his strokes, there was a time where he was in rehab, and we didn't have many deep conversations because he had been working so hard and he was on so many pain medicines. But we had this conversation that I'll never forget. He said, "I need to tell you something." And I said, "What?" And he said, "We will have another child, and it will be a little girl." And I said, "Okay, honey." You know, I was just trying to pacify him a little bit. And he said, "No, I need to get this out that we are going to have another child. It's going to be a little girl, and you know what to name her." And I had had a dream years prior about holding this baby girl, and her name was Ellis. And when I looked up the meaning of her name, it meant the same as my husband's name, which is Jehovah is God.
Jehovah is God.
So in that moment, he told me we would have a girl. He told me what to name her. And I carried that thought with me after his death. It was one of the first things that kept rolling through my mind after he died. And that was the first inkling where I thought, is our story not over yet?
6 months after Joel's passing, for the very first time in your life, I think, you had, oh no, I guess with Milo too, the positive test for pregnancy, right?
Yes.
After so many disappointments and infertility. And you had both of those frozen embryos implanted, and one of them became your beautiful daughter. And we just think, oh, this is such a happy ending. And I hate spoiler alert. We are coming into the most horrible crisis within pages. Your daughter has spots on her brain that are dying, first a high fever and then brain death.
Yeah.
And you're taking imprints of her hands and feet and a clipping of her hair before disconnecting her to let her pass.
Yes, she was born healthy. You know, I'd made that choice to implant the embryos, and it was a miracle that she was born. It was a miracle that she was a girl, just like my husband said. And then at 2 weeks old, she goes from being normal in the morning to being diagnosed with bacterial meningitis on a ventilator and given absolutely no hope to live. And at that point, I'm saying, God, I haven't understood before, but I really don't understand now. What is it that you're doing? You give me this miracle, and now it seems like it's just going to be ripped right out of my hands. And they were telling me I was going to have to remove her from a vent when I had just done so a year and a half prior with my husband. And it was just inconceivable to have to turn around and do it again. But
this is as close to a resurrection as I have ever been. And I don't know if the medical people use the word miracle. I can't think of anything else. They were astounded.
Yeah, they took her off the vent and they put her on my chest. I wanted her to be skin to skin so she could leave the world the way that she entered it. And so they unhooked her from all the tubes except for one so they could monitor her vitals to tell us when she passed. And I just put her on my chest and rocked her and told her that I was proud of her and that she would get to be with Jesus and she would get to see her dad that day, and how jealous I was and I wished I could go with them. And as the moments ticked on, she just got stronger and stronger, and her heart rate steadied itself, and she started breathing with the ventilator like she hadn't for weeks before, and she quit seizing. And as the moments went on, we realized, I think we're going to get a miracle today. And I look at her now at 22 months old, and she's amazing. She's saying mama and rolling and sitting, and every day I get to behold a miracle, and my heart is just so grateful.
What about the dead parts of her brain that were so clear on the scan after all those seizures?
You know, nothing is too impossible for Jesus, and I know that he healed her, and I know that he's continually healing her as we start to see her, you know, improvements daily.
No wonder the world is looking in on your life, Sarah, your courage, what you have endured, the faithfulness of God in what you would never have chosen.
You know, you mentioned Job, and one of my favorite verses in Job is where he said, my ears have heard, but now my eyes have seen. And that's how I feel like is our story, is that, you know, I had heard about God and I had heard about these things, but like I said in the book, they became more than just words on a page. And now I can say, I have seen his goodness, and I am seeing his goodness. Even being here with you today is a part of our redemption story. And I've gotten to see and know him in ways through suffering that many don't ever get to in their lives. And I honestly count it a privilege.
And Joel would be so thrilled that every year on the anniversary of his death, your project, Choose Joy, pays forward God's blessing to others.
Yeah, we wanted to take some of the sting and power out of that day, so we decided to make the day of his death be about life and about doing random acts of kindness for others. So I put the word out on my blog, and people all over the United States have signed up every year to go out and just celebrate kindness and celebrate his life, and his legacy lives on, and it is the most humbling thing. And I hope he's smiling down on us and so proud, and we just want to honor his life continually.
No doubt. What's your blog site?
It is Journey of Sarah with an H, journeyofsarah.com.
Well, Jeremiah 31:25, God says, "For I have given rest to the weary and joy to the sorrowing." You will see that in this incredible journey, a journey of beauty from ashes. From depths we rise. I hope you are owning that God can do that for you, whatever you're facing right now. And if you're struggling, please call our prayer lines. We're waiting to believe with you. Prayer really does make a difference. Pray for this precious family. There are more chapters ahead. Please come back, Sarah.
I would love to. Thank you
Can't
very
wait
much.
to see all God has in store.
Thank you, Maura.